Welcome back to our second DVD out of 3. Lindsey, what else has the elite told you?
Well, first of all, Stan, let me say thank you so much for moderating. I appreciate you allowing me to use the studio, and it's a privilege to be back again with you for what the elite have said.
We're glad to have you.
It's not from the tea leaves or the fortune teller, not from the stargazers. This is actually what they, the elite themselves, plan to do. Now, I'll just give a little resume here. Some of the things I was told that will happen within 12 months. First of all, the elite do not want war with Iran. You can pretty much take this out of your mind for the time being, even though there may be some skiers out there. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, it's merely saber rattling. It will distract your attention from the true issues that may be taking place in Washington that they're doing. Healthcare bill, it is not a healthcare bill, he said. This is government takeover. Read between the lines. Understand what these people are doing. Try to set our mindset where theirs is so that we will understand them. Let me begin, if I may, with crude oil. After all, you do drive that automobile, you put the heating fuel in your tank in cold weather. Fuel affects everything from the jet aircraft to your home to your job. I was told a year ago that crude oil was going from $147 a barrel to $50 a barrel, and within 3 months, it did exactly what I was told.
Exactly.
I was laughed at. It happened exactly like they said, and therefore I can easily believe that it is going to where he says it's going now. So let me mention that if you saw my DVDs back about a year ago, I stated the fact that they had told me that the price of crude oil was going from $147 to $50 and would remain somewhere in the area of $50 a barrel. Well, it's up to $80 a barrel, back down to $70, and fluctuating all over the place above $50. So when I was talking with this elitist, I said the price of crude oil has gone up to $80. Where is it going now? And I emphasize the word now. And he just laughed. He said, Chaplain, come on. He said the price of crude, I'll never forget this. This was so comical. These fellows do have a sense of humor sometimes. And he said, Chaplain, the price of crude oil is not $80 a barrel, it's $50. Well, what do you do when you're talking with one of the people who makes the decision?
That rules the world.
That rules the world.
Don't argue.
What do you say to him whenever he says no? And I saw it right there. I mean, I knew where it was that day. And he said, no, it's not. It's $50 a barrel. And so I tried to get my composure and see if I couldn't figure out how to ask him the leading question. And so I finally did. And I said, well, what do you mean it's $50 a barrel? He said, Chaplain, whether the world wants to admit it or not, he said, crude oil is still sold in dollars. Now, you remember a while back that they said they were going to get a basket of currencies, but they haven't been able to do it yet. They may in the future, but he said for right now, whether the world likes it or not, oil is still denominated in dollars. He said crude oil is still the standard currency of the world. And everything revolves around crude oil. Watch crude oil prices. Now, here's my first key. And everybody out there in the viewing audience, I beg of you, I'm going to give you a sign. This sign, now the elite do. They gave the sign of Katrina. 2 weeks before they had before Katrina, they had the movie Oil Storm. It was a buzzword. It was a sign as to what was going to happen. And we talked about some of that in the first DVD. Now, let's go to a sign. And here it is. The sign, crude oil prices. Watch them and you'll know the sign of the elite as to where they are in what they're going to do with the dollar. When crude oil prices go, you know exactly where the dollar has gone.
Okay, meaning when crude oil prices go up, the value of the dollar does what?
That means the dollar is going down.
That's what I thought.
In value, in purchasing power.
Okay, but now he was saying that the price of crude oil is still $50. Explain that. When we look at here, we see it's $75, $80 now, but he says, no, it's still 50. What's going on?
And it may go to 90. It may go to 100. But he said it's 50. And I said, explain, just as you said to me. He did. He said, okay, first of all, he said, we are going to allow the OPEC oil-producing countries of the world, anybody who trades in oil, he said, we're going to allow them to get $50 a barrel. But he said, the dollar is still the currency in which oil is traded, and he said they will get the purchasing power of the dollar as of the time that I told you it was going to $50 a barrel. That means a year ago, the purchasing power of the dollar, what would it purchase? That's the purchasing power. In other words, it still stays that they're getting $50 in purchasing power, even though it may be $80 a barrel. The purchasing power is still the purchasing power of what $50 would have been. In other words, if you paid, let's take any item you want to. We could take a silver dollar or a 1 ounce gold piece. And let's say that 1 year ago, you could buy that gold piece for, I'm just going to...
Around $900, I think is correct.
Yeah, $900.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, today, it would take $1,000 to $1,500 to buy that 1 ounce gold piece. That means what would be the purchasing power of a dollar a year ago compared to what it is right now? And that's what they're going to allow the oil-producing countries of the world to get, not the number of dollars, but the purchasing power of the dollar as of the time they took it to $50 a barrel.
So when it's at $80 and he says, no, the price is still $50, what indirectly he's saying is the value of the dollar has already gone down to the point to where now, even though it's selling at $80, the price is still $50.
There is your sign. You got it? The sign. Oh, that $80, only $50 it would have only taken $50 a year ago to buy the same thing $80 will buy today. So when they took it down from $147 to $50 a barrel, now, in order to purchase the same thing with that $50 today, because of the devaluation of the dollar, it takes 80 of them instead of 50 of them. It took $800 to buy an ounce of gold back then. Mm-hmm. It takes $1,000 to $1,500 to buy an ounce of gold today. That means that the purchasing power of the dollar is the only thing that has changed. The gold is still 1 ounce of gold. The silver is still 1 ounce of silver.
In other words, in terms of crude oil, as it relates to gold, is the same price, and he says it's going to continue to stay the same price. So if we see the value of crude oil continue to go up, what it's really telling us is that's a standard by where we can measure how much the dollar goes down, correct?
That's the buzzword. That's the sign. And watch it, because he made it very plain that the oil-producing countries of the world will be allowed to have, he controls them. I mean, they control these people. The Arabs think that they control the price of a barrel of oil. It's a joke. OPEC doesn't control the price of a barrel of oil at all. The price of a barrel is controlled by the elite. And wherever they want it is where it's going to go.
Then are you indirectly saying that there's not Arabs that are a member or a part of the ruling elite?
I don't know. I saw a few of them at Prudhoe Bay, but I did not know who they were. The group of the ruling elite that I knew did not necessarily contain any of these people that I saw, but that doesn't mean that I saw all of them.
Okay, this is risky, but would I be correct in saying that most of the ruling elite are white Anglo-Saxon Protestant types? That's maybe a general question.
Not really. I'm oftentimes tried to be pinned down on this on radio talk shows, and I know what they want me to say. they want me to use a certain ethnic term. But I didn't
really
find
can't.
it that way. So in order to be honest with you, I know the first thing that people would like me to say is that everybody in the ruling elite is Jewish. They're not. I saw Gentiles there. I saw many different nationalities there. And I have, in order to be honest,
and besides that, you only saw a fairly small group, just the ones that Prudhoe Bay. In other words, they didn't take you around the globe introducing you to all of them. So it could be all kinds of nationalities, right?
But I cannot be ethnic on this because I did not find it that way, even though many of my friends would like me to do that.
What about religion? No specific religion is a guarantee of any of them? In other words, it's a mixture of all of them?
The God of this world, the prince of the power of this air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience in the Scriptures would be the best way to explain what I would like to say in general is the God of the elite. And I think I explained that in my DVD set 6 months ago when he talked about the devil's Messiah.
Right.
I won't go back into that in this series.
Right.
But please get my previous series where I talked about what they've done to subvert our schools, our churches, how they had to do away with the God of America in order to pervert this nation. They had destroy its morals through Hollywood and its wickedness. Now, all of that was in my DVD set 6 months ago, and you definitely want to see what it would be, what I would call their religion back in those days. So, based on the purchasing power of $50 a barrel, the oil producers, the oil will go up or down based on the value of the dollar, and as he said, the dollar is going to lose 50% of its purchasing power or its value within the next 12 months, 30 to 50%. That means that the price of crude oil will go up. At the gas pump, related to the purchasing power of the dollar, it will go up that 30 to 50%. So if you're paying $2.50 a gallon at the gas pump at a certain time, you could be paying $5 a gallon at the gas pump a year from now, but you still would not be paying any more than what $2.50 would have bought a year ago. It's only that the purchasing power of the dollar had varied. When the dollar loses 50%, then you'll see the price of the gas go up because they must get $50 a barrel. All right, let me give you an example. I have right here something out of the Dow Jones Newswires. And it goes on to talk about Saudi Arabia. I'll use it merely because most people recognize that as it says 90% of Saudi Arabia's exports come from oil. They have sought to maintain the price at $80 a barrel in value of the American dollar. Right. And the reason they want that is because the kingdom has obligated itself for more than $400 billion in defense, energy, and infrastructure projects, and in order to maintain the payback on what they owe and what they have purchased, they must have $80 a barrel in order to maintain their economy. But they're only getting $50 a barrel in purchasing power. Therefore, every day they are losing and not gaining. They're going backwards instead of forward, as you saw in Dubai. In our DVD number 1, what has happened in Dubai because of the collapse of the economy of the entire world, which basically, of course, revolves around what's happening with crude oil, as crude oil is the standard currency of the world. Now, when you understand what's happened there, then you realize that the oil-producing countries of the world, OPEC, they really aren't going forward. They're going backwards in their purchasing power because of the value of the dollar. The price of gasoline at the gas pump is going up rather than down. And it's going up according to what happens to the purchasing power of the dollar. In the next 12 months, oil will go up proportionately. Let me give you an example that it kind of comes home to me.
But at the same time, it still stays at $50 a barrel as that relates to gold. So as we see the price of crude oil go up, the price at the pump go up, that's telling us how little our dollar will now buy.
Exactly. And you will see prices go up accordingly. This is called inflation. And they monetize the national debt by inflation, devaluing the dollar. And as he told me about a year ago, within 2 years, approximately a year and a half, 2 years from now, the dollar will be dead. Let me explain. In 1974, and at this point we're going to show a picture of what I bought that year. I was a missionary in the state of Alaska. And I bought a brand new, right off the assembly line, Maul aircraft. It's one of the finest STOL aircrafts built on the face of this earth, and marvelous on floats, and it was wonderful for Alaska missionary as a bush plane. It was a tail dragger instead of a nose wheel. And I bought it right off the assembly line, this aircraft that you're looking at right now on the screen, and I bought it for $13,000. Just the other day, I went on the website of Maul Aircraft. They still build airplanes. The identical same airplane, same engine, same propeller, same wheels, same tire, same airframe, identical to what I bought in 1974 for $13,000. That identical same airplane today costs $150,000.
Wow.
Now the airplane has not changed at all. Nothing.
Wow.
Everything on that airplane is the same, from the engine to the tail, from the prop to the tire. Everything's the same. Now, how much did that dollar purchasing power devaluate since 1974 to today? How much did it devalue? It devalued that money, devalued the cost, $13,000, down to $150,000 today. That means that the dollar devalued 91.3%.
Wow.
Now, this is actual. This literally took place. I mean, you can go on Maul Aircraft site and look at this. No change whatsoever in the airplane. The dollar is the only thing that's changed value. Now, the same thing with crude oil. Crude oil was $50 a barrel. It's more than that now. It will continue to go up. But the purchasing power of what they get for the crude oil when it comes out of the ground in Saudi Arabia is still a purchasing power of $50. Today, I have to earn $150,000 in order to buy that identical same airplane because of the purchasing power of the dollar.
I have a couple of examples like that too. As a matter of fact, over the holidays, we were just talking. I was with my family, and we were in a burger joint and buying a very small burger and fries and a drink. And it was about $5. And I made a comment. I said, I can remember all through junior high and high school, my mom would give me 2 silver quarters, and that was my lunch money. And with that, I bought a great big hamburger, much bigger than the ones today, and French fries and a Coke, all for 50 cents. And then I was talking to him, I said, but I can remember a time that my dad told me that he would go downtown to the movie theater, and his dad gave him a nickel, and that got him into the movie theater and bought him some kind of a drink, some kind of a soda, and popcorn, all for a nickel. Now, it's not that things have got more expensive, it's that the dollar is worth less. It's been said that you can take a gold piece, a 1 ounce gold piece, 150 years ago, and it would buy you a good business suit. Today, the same thing is true. A 1 ounce gold piece will still buy you a pretty good business suit. In other words, the value of gold really hasn't changed. It's that paper money that has gone up, or in this case, down.
The elite have stolen 91% of the value of your money. Now they're going to steal what's left. Because he said to me, the dollar will devalue between 30 and 50% within the next 12 months. Do you realize that the retirement of that person who began many, many years ago to prepare for their old age has now been devalued 91%. And what little bit is left will be done in within the next 2 years, according to the elite. Your Social Security, your pension fund, all of these things you're depending on. I feel so sorry for the senior citizen. I don't know what to do.
Let me back up and give you another angle. Let me back up to the price of crude oil. Again, in addition to doing a radio program and pastoring a church, I'm also president and CEO of an oil company who plans to go drill a well in Israel. And I also, God has got me involved in selling crude oil products on the side. Very interesting. About 6 months ago, some people came to me and they said, we have a Saudi prince that wants to sell, I believe it was 50 million barrels of crude oil a month. And he's willing to give a great discount of like $6 a barrel if someone will just come and buy it directly. And of course, I began calling some of my sources, some of the refineries in America, trying to see if they would buy it. Every one of the refineries says, absolutely not. If we want any Saudi crude oil, we will call Aramco and we will buy it directly from them. We don't need you bringing it to us. And I said, yes, but can he offer you a $6 discount? Or are you buying regular Platt price? No, we pay Platt. And matter of fact, we're not allowed to buy any discounted oil. Now, here's what's really happening in my opinion. I believe that as the price of the crude oil has dropped down to $50 a barrel as part of the ruling elite's plan, and of course in your other DVD set you begin to explain how they're doing this to begin to bankrupt the OPEC countries, then what they've allowed them to do is to go back behind the scenes, under the table, if you will, to begin to sell some of their crude oil. In other words, not going through Aramco to get a better price for them. Even though they're giving a $6 discount per barrel, a much bigger discount, they're able to make more money by going under the table. Still crude oil, it's legal, it's not illegal to do it, but many of the refineries absolutely will not touch it, and I believe it's because the ruling elite tell them you will buy it through Aramco. Or if you want Nigerian Bonnie Light, you will buy it through Nigerian Petroleum, then NNPC, National Nigerian Petroleum Corporation. You have to buy it through the normal sources. But of course, there's some people that want to get a little bit more for it, and they don't go through the regular market sources to do so.
Then the ruling elite invented the greatest theft that has probably ever taken place in the history of this world. And they're called derivatives. I promised that I would give an explanation of derivatives in this DVD because it is so vital that you understand what they have done and how they're able to accomplish all of this. Now, in DVD number 1, we talked about Dubai City and the problem that Dubai City is having as a result of the world economy. I'd like to distinguish between Dubai City and Dubai World. Make a big distinction between the two. Now, you saw what's happened in Dubai City, which is a partial result of all of these economic things. But Dubai World has its tentacles in everything imaginable. Real estate, they tried to take over and run all of the port facilities in America, and you remember there was quite a squabble in Congress over that. But this individual, this elite, said to me, Chaplain, do you have the foggiest idea how devastating the derivatives of Dubai World have been to the banking system today? And he went on and on and on to talk about derivatives. Now, derivatives are very complicated financial instruments. Even people who trade in them sometimes have a difficulty in understanding. It is estimated that there are over 100 trillion, now you did hear me correctly, I did not say billion, it's estimated that there are over $100 trillion in financial derivatives floating around the world banking system today. And much of this was created by he said one of the biggest traders in derivatives is Dubai World. And he said the average person has not the slightest idea how close to a complete collapse of the financial system, banking system there is worldwide. Not just America,
but worldwide.
Worldwide. Because of the default on derivatives over Thanksgiving weekend of Dubai World. $80 billion they defaulted on, and of course much, much more has gone on under the table since then. But he kept on elaborating just how drastic this whole situation is. So at this point, I would like to explain visually, if I can, by this that you're about to watch.
So this is much bigger than any Bernie Madoff scam.
Oh my goodness. Madoff is that's a Sunday school picnic compared to what the world is facing today in the derivative market. So
I say that because that affected a lot of people. This is going to affect a lot more people, right?
Oh, this is going to affect the core of the banking system worldwide. Not just in America, but in every nation of the world, and every institution that handles money is involved today in derivatives.
Now, I know in the other DVD, he kept saying, now, Chaplain, don't call it a depression. Is he still not calling it a depression? I mean, what are you going to call this? A worldwide meltdown financially?
They really aren't putting a name on it because they have everything to gain by what they're doing, and which I'll explain in a few moments.
But that's what it is. It's a worldwide
meltdown.
Depression, really, isn't it? Can we call it that?
Can
we call it that?
It's a worldwide financial meltdown. It really is. But it's what they want. And they invented the derivative market, the elite did, many years ago for the purpose of doing this. They knew it would eventually come to this because of the illicit or wicked, or however you like to classify it, depending on how your mind works,
their plans.
Plan of what derivatives are. Derivatives are they're dastardly. I mean, they're evil. Derivatives are something that exists, but it doesn't exist. So, okay, watch it.
It's a legal way of stealing from all over the world. Not just America, but all of the world, right?
Yes. So watch this on derivatives right now, and then we'll go on from there.
One more quick comment. On the front of Morals and Dogma, it has a phrase. It says, ordo ab chaos. It's Latin. It means order out of chaos. What order? A new world order, a world government system. Out of what chaos? A chaos they create. Yes, I think that has to do with World War III, but I think that it also has to do with our finances. So they're building a new society, a new secular, a novus ordo seclorum, a new world society, not based upon the Bible, out of the ashes of the old world society. And that's what they're really doing here.
New world order.
Analogy, most clear analogy would be if you could go to the Super Bowl or you watch the Super Bowl on television and you bet on a team. Your bet and the value of your bet is derivative of what that team does. You don't own the team. You don't get the trophy. You don't get the money that a winning team gets. You don't get the advertising. But you've placed a bet on that team. Someone has agreed to take the other side of the bet. And your bet is derivative of the success of the Super Bowl champion. If you bet correctly, if you bet incorrectly, you lose your bet. To apply that to our present crisis, many bets were placed on the question of whether individuals who took out loans from lenders to pay for their houses and did not, on the face of it, seem to have the wherewithal to pay the loans off. There were many bets placed on whether the loan would be paid off or would not be paid off. And just to carry that through for you a little bit, historically, traditionally, banks made loans to individuals. And the bank was putting its financial well-being at risk. So they were very careful about who they made the loan to. And many years ago, when I took out a loan in my home, the bank did all the due diligence in the world to ensure not only that I can make the first payment or the first year's payment, but I had a 30-year fixed mortgage, and they wanted a guarantee that I would be able to pay over that 30 years. So they called my employer, not only to find out if I had a job, but whether I would continue to have a job. That discipline in the market has disappeared because what banks do with their loans now is they make the loan and then they sell the loan to third parties. Third parties essentially buy stock in the loan. The loans are bundled into a basket, offered to the world, they buy stock in it. Owning that stock is not a derivative because you're an actual owner of the loan. What happened in our situation, especially when the mortgage lenders wanted to take risks with subprime loans, that is, people who did not have the likelihood to pay them off, is that people were so excited about the possibility of making money off this that they ran out of the actual mortgages and securities in the mortgages. So what the banks decided to do was to create bets on whether or not the mortgages would be paid off. They were synthetic securities. That is to say, you didn't own anything, but you were betting that the borrower would pay the mortgage off. And the matter gets even worse than that, because the most classic thing that I think people are aware of today is the AIG situation. And I think most people understand that AIG was an insurance company. It was the world's largest insurance company. It was very, very successful. But AIG decided to get into the business of insuring whether or not these securities instruments, whether they be real ownership or synthetic ownership of debt, they would insure the value of whatever payments were made and the returns. So you could well imagine people would be saying, well, I am betting on the question of whether somebody who on the face of it may not be able to pay off the loan. That's a risky proposition. And companies and investment banks and banks like AIG said, don't worry, we'll insure it. The problem is the insurance, unlike normal insurance that you and I get on our life, our home, our cars, Congress decided to deregulate this market. So there were no rules as to how this would happen. And in a company like AIG, they had over 20 divisions. All but one were hugely successful. And on the day AIG, September 16, 2008, went busto, the regulated divisions had $20 billion in reserves. The one division that was issuing these insurance policies in an unregulated format never had to put capital aside for the day when those policies would be triggered. And so we woke up on September 16, 2008 to find out that there was insurance owed, no money to pay it, and the taxpayer in the initial go-round paid $85 billion. In the later go-round, we've gone up to $165 billion. So we're paying off unregulated instruments that look like insurance policies, but AIG never set aside the capital to do it. And by the way, the subdivision or division that did this was all the way over in London. It was a tiny little operation. AIG's equity value was $200 billion. This little operation issued $400 billion in insurance on these bets as to whether or not people would pay their mortgages. If you So in other words, we're sending money through AG. Goldman Sachs got $14 billion. And we don't know whether Goldman Sachs got that money because they had a real interest in whether the loans were being paid off or whether they had a synthetic interest. In other words, like somebody betting on the Super Bowl, they bet that people would not pay their mortgages. They won those bets. AIG didn't have the money, so you and I paid AIG so AIG could win effectively the winner of the Super Bowl person being the person who has bet big that people cannot pay their mortgages. It's one thing for us to have an economic problem because people can't pay their mortgages and money is lost to the lenders or the whole economy for real problems here. But I believe 3 times as much money is being lost, not because people really lost their mortgages, because 3 times the value of the loss of the mortgage is a bet that's been placed by wealthy institutions or wealthy individuals. So in other words, when you hear that all this money is being shoved out into the economy to save these institutions, they've booked these bets. When Goldman won its bets, it put that down on its balance sheet. If it didn't get paid off on its bets, its financial statement would have gone haywire. And so we are in the business of stepping into the casino and paying off the casino's obligations so all these huge financial institutions who are already in trouble don't get in worse trouble. Yes, the value of a derivative is I can get an insurance policy against a real loss. The non-economic value is I can get an insurance policy on someone else's misery. You cannot do that in the insurance world. I can't buy an insurance policy on your house. But in this deregulated world, 3 times the number of policies were issued to people who did not have anything at risk, simply wanted to make a bet that homeowners would not pay their mortgages. Now, if there's an economic value to that, I need some further education.
Because of the derivatives in the world today, and the derivatives in the real estate market. Now, this is another whole section. When you're dealing with Dubai World, you're dealing with big mega finance and big banking and the derivatives that have been created out of thin air, so-called money, which is nothing but paper. And that's the reason I stress so much in DVD number 1. Get out of paper of every form, shape, form, whatever it is. It's worth the money it's written on. These derivatives are literally worthless, but yet they're traded as money. Now, this has brought about something very drastic in the real estate market, and you are not going to see a recovery of the real estate market anytime soon because of derivatives. Okay, now we're going to do a section on derivatives in the real estate market. In America, mainly, but you could say worldwide, real estate's doing the same thing. But in America, so right now, watch for just a moment as we show you the real estate market in relation to derivatives, which really makes it drastic.
How do you create a subprime derivative and how do you blow it up? Senior economics reporter Steve Leisman knows, and he's here to explain with the help of the axis of easel here. Stephen?
We call this burning down the house because that's sort of what's been happening. This looks like the books of some hedge funds or investment banks we know.
Right now it does,
now that they've had these subprimes blow up. But what we have to do first is we have to create it first. Then we'll show you how it went bad.
All
so
right.
Work with me on this, Bill. If you don't understand anything here, you let me know.
I always do.
You start off very simply here. You take a bunch of mortgages here, okay? Joe, Fred, Jane, okay? They're $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 mortgage. You put it into one big thing. We call it a mortgage-backed security. Say it's $50 million worth, okay? That's step 1. We got more. We got more to go here.
I'm with you.
You're with me on this.
This is the easy part.
That's the easy part, okay? Now, you take a bunch of these mortgage-backed securities and you put it into one very big thing. You see, that's a $50 million piece, that's a $50 million piece. The one thing about all these guys here is they're all subprime borrowers. All their credit is bad, or there's something about it that doesn't make it prime, okay?
All of them.
Right, now watch, interesting thing we're gonna do here is remember these are subprime credits, right?
Yes, yes.
We're going to make some AAA paper out of this. Well, you just watch. We're going to make some good paper. So now we have this thing here, a $1 billion vehicle here, right?
Okay.
Now's the tricky part, because what we're going to do is we're going to slice it up into 5 different pieces.
Got
okay?
it.
5 different pieces. Call them tranches, call them levels, call them what you will. But the key here is they're not divided by Jane's is here and Joe's is here, right? Jane is actually in all 5 pieces here. Why? Because what we're doing here is your BBB minus tranche here. They're going to take the first losses from whoever is in the pool. Somebody stops paying, okay, all the way up to about 8% of the losses these guys are assuming. So what they're saying is, look, you got it. You got losses in your thing, I will absorb those losses and pay you for them. In return, you're going to pay me a relatively high interest rate. All the way up to AAA, where 24% of the losses are below them, okay? So the whole 24% of it has to go bad before they see any losses. And they get, you will see, a relatively low interest rate. Now, what is AAA paper?
Right.
Here's what we've done. Here's the magic of this as far as the Wall Street's concerned. We have taken subprime paper and created GE quality paper out of this, okay? We have a AAA tranche here, okay? Now, we're going to show how it's blown up here. Here's a little nuclear bomb action there, okay? Here's the issue when it was issued. Your AAA paper had a yield of about 5.3%. Now it's 7.7. Now it's 5.45%, okay?
So it's risen.
All right? But look at what's happened to the BBB minus paper. 7.75 around there when it was issued. And now it's 30%.
Wow.
Tremendous losses in there and gains for the guys who come in now and hold this paper. What's interesting about this is this thing suggests that there will be 80 or 90% losses in this, and all they've been is like in the 12% range. So some guys are seeing a lot of value in here. Let's look at some of the keys to the blow up here now, Bill.
Okay.
Foreclosures and delinquencies have been on the rise quite a bit. That's deteriorated that BBB tranche right there, and really gone up a little bit into the BBB. If housing worsens, these things get worse from here. The big question here are ratings downgrades. If that AAA paper suddenly becomes seen as B paper or even just single A paper, it's going to affect the entire capital structure. So that's what you do. You take a whole bunch of mortgages, you put them in a pot, and you slice them up by losses, then you sell them out there, and the blow-up part has come because of a lack of belief. Not an actuality, but a lack of belief in the creditworthiness of these subprime borrowers.
There has to be a lot of faith in some of these investments that they make.
As they said in the song, we're in for nasty weather.
Yes.
Thank you. It was very clear.
You got it?
Well done. I got it.
All right.
You promised and you delivered.
Something accomplished.
Once again. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
No wonder American dollar's in trouble. You readily can understand from watching these sections on derivatives why inflation is going to go the way it's going, why the dollar is going to collapse. 38 million Americans are on food stamps right now. 38 million Americans. Now, when their food stamps will buy exactly half 12 months from now what they buy today, what's going to happen on the streets of America?
That's right. Well, I think it's going to be more than just soup kitchens. I think it's going to be more than just holding a sign on a stick. It may be that we're going to see some real problems, people getting angry because they are hungry.
But those food stamps buying 50% less 12 months from now than what I was told within 12 months, the dollar will buy 50% less than what it'll buy today. What does that mean 2 years from now it'll be? With this 87-year-old individual said, Chaplain, I mean, this to me, I still think back on his words. He said, Chaplain, I'm too old to care anymore. He said, please tell the people, warn them what's going to happen. Well, that's what I'm trying to do, every way I possibly can. What do the elite have to gain by this? Now, this next section, I'm going to have to admit to you, I got to pull my heart out to you on this, because I've had some people who really know finance to ask me this question. Okay, you're in touch with some of these people. What do they have to gain by what they're doing? A completely collapse of the financial system, 50% more for food, for gasoline, for everyday expenses. So you can't pay the house payment. Let's use something that comes down to home where most everybody lives. You can't make your house payment for 3 months. You've been paying on that house now for 10 years, maybe 20 years. The mortgage is held through a lending institution or a bank. And you don't make your payment for 3 months and you get that note. Either pay or we're going to repossess. And you have no way of paying it. The dollar is devaluing more by the day. What you make on the job will buy less and less at the grocery store and the hardware store. So you must put more gasoline in the gas pump, which is going to cost more. And so you can't make that house payment for over 3 months.
Everything has gone up.
No. But
your paycheck has basically been cut in half.
But you've already paid on that house for 20 to 30 years.
That's right.
Oh, I'm sorry, 10 to 20 years. And the bank comes and says, well, can't make your payment. I guess we have no choice. We'll have to repossess. Do they give you anything back?
No, they don't.
Now, let's consider who those people are. You remember the government bailout during the last 2 to 3 months of the Bush administration. Then Obama came along and he's just giving to the banks, giving to everybody, bailout, basically bought General Motors, basically bought Chrysler, and AIG, on and on and on it goes, government takeover, and now all of those people who work for those businesses are employees of the federal government, whether they want to admit it or not. So, who bails out the banks that have gotten into so much trouble? Every one of them have been bailed out to a certain extent. Who bailed them out? Well, the taxpayer did through the Treasury, but it was done by way of the Federal Reserve. Oh my goodness.
What you are really saying, this is not about just taking over America.
No.
This is a global takeover.
Global.
This is not an American confiscation of our nation. They are taking over the world with this. That's where they're really heading.
Yes.
Okay, so they take over not only our factories, our homes, our property, and so they own it all.
But what do they pay for it?
Pennies on a dollar.
That house. You've been paying on it for 10 years or 20 years, and they have a right to repossess it if you miss your payment for 3 months? What do they get the house for?
Pennies on a dollar.
You've already paid them thousands of dollars.
Actually, they almost get the house free and clear.
Free and clear. Plus you've paid them for 10 years or 20 years or 6 months or a year or 5 years. However long you may have had that mortgage. You have given them your hard-earned money, but now that you can't make your payment because they have created the crisis monetarily in America and the world.
Out of thin air.
Out of thin air with derivatives and all of these other instruments that they've used to create this crisis. Right. Now they turn around and take your house back because you cannot make the payment because of the crisis they have created. What do they have to gain by creating the crisis? They have everything to gain.
And will get it all.
What did they get, General
And they paid for it with PFA, money plucked from air.
Paper. Computer entries is all they paid for it. And what
I can see it. And I think our viewers can see it. They can see, yes. This is a global takeover. You know, I mean, I'm a pretty smart guy. I understand this stuff, but I see it at a new level here.
But they have everything to gain by this.
Oh, yes.
They're losing nothing by the destruction of the financial system of the world today. They have everything to gain. And when the smoke clears, they're going to own General Motors. They're going to own Chrysler. They'll hold all the banks. They will control most every big industry. They'll own most of the mom and pop businesses. They'll probably hold 75 to 80% of all the real estate in the United States of America.
Wow.
And they will have gained every bit of this. And then they take your house and they turn around and rent it back to you so you will have something to stay in and live in. And now they will control you by renting your house back to you every month. They have everything to gain by what they're doing and nothing to lose. And every bit of it, I have been begging and pleading with people for the past 35 years to listen to me as the elite have been telling me this. I've been begging you to hear me that all of this is planned behind closed doors by the elite of the world.
I remember Tennessee Ernie Ford sang a song, 16 Tons. And in there, one of the phrases was, I owe my soul to the company store. Well, the world, not just America, the world is about to owe its soul to the ruling elite.
Yes. And what do they have to lose? Nothing. What do they have to gain? Everything.
So we're all going to be working for the government or the world.
Well, who is the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve is not an agency of the government of the United States of America, yet it is the one who is bailed out by way off the Treasury because of the stupid politicians in Washington that didn't have sense enough, or should I say morals enough, to turn down the doles that they've been given. And all of a sudden we are ruled by the ruling elite through an agency that's not even an agency of the Federal. The Federal Reserve is no more an agency of the federal government than Federal Express.
That's right. It's 12 international banking families.
Yes. And what will the elite own? You asked me in the first DVD, how many of them are there? And I said approximately 12. And who will basically control everything when the smoke is cleared and it's all over with again?
We're in trouble.
We are,
not just America. Not just, the states. Most of the 50 states of America are broke. Most of our big cities are broke. They're about to file bankruptcy. But this is not a city problem. This is not a state problem. This is not a national problem. This is an international financial meltdown. That's what you're really telling us.
Who is the Federal Reserve? It's the elite. Who's going to own all this after it's all over? So you get your house. They get your house free of charge. They get your automobile. They have everything to gain. The elite will own it when it's all over with. Everything that is mortgaged, AIG, all of these corporations. When will the American people wake up to realize that if something is not done immediately,
actually,
you and your children,
won't.
You and your children are going to be slaves to the elite.
That's right.
And this is their goal in the new world order that was stated many years ago.
Let me bring in some prophecy on this. Jeremiah 51 verse 9 says, we would have healed Babylon, that's America, but she would not be healed. Let me throw some more prophecy. Jeremiah chapter 51 verses 37 and 59 essentially says the same thing, that America will sleep, a perpetual sleep, and not wake. In other words, even though we see earthquakes in Haiti, even though we see Katrinas, even though we see financial meltdowns, Americans will continue to sleep. We will not see it. We will not wake up, and we will continue to go the way every other nation and empire in the past has gone that has turned from God.
Is there any hope? Yes. Positively. And I want you to put a smile on your face.
I got it. I'm optimistic.
Because there is hope. I was lecturing in Canada. A gentleman came up to me after my presentation and he said, Chaplain, I want to request you to go home. Go back to the United States. He said, there's not much you can do to help us Canadians. He said, we don't have your Constitution. But he said, you've still got yours. And he said, if you can get back to it, there's hope for you. He said, I want you to go back to America and beg every person there to force your government to obey the Constitution. So I want to quote something. I want to quote Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of our nation. Thomas Jefferson said, bind the politicians, the government, and I'm going to put in some words here. Bind the Federal Reserve, bind down the congressmen, bind them, and I'll use Thomas Jefferson's words now, bind them with the chains of the Constitution. We have hope. That Constitution's still there. They haven't been able to burn it yet. If we could force them to return to that God-given document. I think it's probably, apart from the Scriptures, the most inspired, God-given document on the face of this earth. Scriptures number 1, Constitution number 2. It gave man hope. And if we will go back to that great document, this thing can be turned around. Require them to obey it, whether they want to or not, and say, if you don't get elected next time, you are out. And when the American people wake up to the fact that we have hope through the Constitution of the United States of America, this thing can be turned around. Now I want you to watch something right here. You are going to be amazed at this one. It's called hyperinflation. And here it is.
Let me go to Mark Faber in Budapest. Mark, I heard you say that you now believe it is 100% guaranteed that we are going to have hyperinflation like Zimbabwe.
Yes, that's correct.
And if we destroy our currency, which is what the Obama plan might do, if we have hyperinflation, it's not going to matter how much money we have because we're not going to be able to buy anything with it.
Well, Adrian, when you print gigantic amounts of money and you flood the world with money, throughout history, that has led to inflation.
If you're worried about $4 a gallon of gasoline, you better worry about an $8 a gallon of gasoline.
The problem is we have a printing press. We can pay our debts by printing money. People think that hyperinflation can't happen here. Well, you know, the laws of physics works everywhere. If you throw a ball up in the air in Zimbabwe, gravity is going to bring it back down.
You can't print phantom money out of thin air based on nothing and producing practically nothing without causing the dollar to devalue dramatically.
That's not deflation, that's temporary.
Quantitative easing is inflation. But they're going to blow us all up.
So my question to you is, will you tell the American people to whom you lent $2.2 trillion of their dollars, will you tell us who got that money and what the terms are of those agreements?
No.
Inflation, simply explained, is the printing of money. Inflation is the value of the money in your pocket going down, while prices all around you rise. When gas prices rise, when your grocery bills go up, this is a symptom of inflation. The Federal Reserve is printing money out of thin air every day. If you have money in the bank, that money is decreasing in value. In other words, we should all be worried about inflation, because it affects the prices of everything you use on a daily basis. There have been good men warning us for years about inflation. Jim Rogers, Peter Schiff, Mark Faber, Ron Paul, and many others. They have spoken about the uncontrollable spending that will lead to the total collapse of the United States. And then there have been those in power who have ignored the warnings. George W. Bush, Ben Bernanke, Timothy Geithner, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and all of Congress. We will show you how these individuals, through stimulus plans, bailouts, low interest rates, and the ever-expanding balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, will lead to the destruction of the U.S. currency.
We owe the world probably as much, if not more, than Germany owed, only we didn't incur this debt fighting a war. We incurred it remodeling our houses and buying cars and television sets and iPods and all these little gadgets that we didn't need, and now we owe the world trillions, and we're reaching for the printing press to pay it back.
Never before in world history were people able to buy houses with no money down. Many people bought 4 or 5 houses with no money down and no job. And then they did it with cars and student loans and credit card loans. You think we just say, well, that's too bad, we're going to start over, nobody loses his job? Be realistic.
We have to realize that the monetary base, the liquidity was doubled in a few short months. To me, there's a lot of inflation out there. It's already inflated. We're in the midst of inflation. Because the prices haven't gone up doesn't mean we don't have the distortion. And it was that system It gave us the financial bubble, the artificially low interest rates, the malinvestment, all the mistakes made, and now we're trying to correct all that by doing the very, very same thing.
This system that we've had since 1971 is non-viable, and it's coming to an end. That's what this whole story is about.
Bush's $152 billion Economic Stimulus Act of 2008 sent $300 to $600 checks to individuals and $600 to $1,200 checks to married couples. When the checks started to arrive, oil prices surged to $147 per barrel. Americans needed the checks just to buy gas. Obama is taking Bush's mistakes and making them bigger. While Bush's stimulus was a direct injection of inflation, Obama's will take a while to work its way through the system, as pork projects will take years to be completed, but the long-term effects will be many times worse.
The Obama budget deficits, I mean, they dwarf anything that Bush had. I mean, it's ironic that Obama is now trying to criticize Bush for running up the deficit, as he's running it up through the roof. $2 trillion in his first term. And he's saying, well, I'm going to cut it in half by my last year. Well, even if he's right, it's still going to be $1 trillion when he cuts it in half. It's still more than twice the last budget deficit from Bush.
In an attempt to reinflate the dot-com bubble, Alan Greenspan lowered interest rates from 6.5% in 2000 down to 1% in 2003. Greenspan did not reinflate the dot-com bubble, but instead created an unprecedented rise in real estate prices. Now, in an attempt to reinflate the real estate bubble, Ben Bernanke has lowered interest rates from 5.25% in June of 2006 to their current level of 0%.
Tell me, what is the worst case scenario? So we have so many economists coming on our air and saying, oh, this is a bubble and it's going to burst and this is going to be a real issue for the economy. Some say it could even cause a recession at some point. What is the worst case scenario if, in fact, we were to see prices come down substantially across the country?
Well, I guess I don't buy your premise. It's a pretty unlikely possibility. We've never had a decline in house prices on a nationwide basis. So what I think is more likely is that house prices will slow, maybe stabilize, might slow consumption spending a bit. I don't think it's going to drive the economy too far from its full employment path, though.
The motor vehicle sector may already be showing signs of strengthening. After having cut production significantly in recent months, in response to the rise in the inventory of unsold vehicles, automakers appear to have boosted the assembly rate a bit in November, and they have scheduled further increases for December. There's not much indication at this point that subprime mortgage issues have spread into the broader mortgage market, which still seems to be healthy, and the lending side of that still seems to be healthy.
I'm hopeful that, and I'm confident, in fact, that the bank regulators will pay close attention to the kinds of loans that are being made.
Confident the bank regulators will pay close attention to the kind of loans being made? Come on, Ben. How could you have confidence when the industry was pushing ads like this?
That's not the point.
What is the point? What? I love that house. Plus the schools.
The kids are 3 and 1.
They're gonna grow up. What? Suzanne researched this.
This listing is special, John. You guys can do this.
We can do this.
Okay.
Are you kidding me? This is awesome.
See the size of that garage?
Yes. Oh, that's great. Now let me get to work.
And it wasn't just Ben Bernanke's incompetence. Congress did its part too.
The only way they can pass this bill is by creating and sustaining a panic atmosphere. That atmosphere is not justified. Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no. That's what I call fear-mongering. Unjustified. Proven wrong. We've got a week, we've got 2 weeks to write a good bill. The only way to pass a bad bill, keep the panic pressure on.
1,100 pages, not one member of this body has read. Not one. There may be some staffer over in the Appropriations Committee that read all of this last night. I don't know how you could read 1,100 pages between midnight and now. Not one member's read this. What happened to the promise that we're going to let the American people see what's in this bill for 48 hours? But nope, we don't have time to do that.
This policy has never worked. The Americans tried it in the 90s. The policies which have worked, let people who make mistakes collapse, let people who are competent take over the assets from the incompetents and start over. Now what's happening is the governments are taking the assets from the competent, giving the assets to the incompetent, and saying, now you compete with the competent. This is not going to work. I mean, this is madness.
The madness started in 1989 when the government set the precedent of bailing out failed institutions. Since then, it has spiraled out of control. Now our government prints trillions to bail out all sorts of private corporations. These companies used excessive leverage to recklessly speculate while paying themselves huge bonuses. Since Obama was elected president, the Federal Reserve and U.S. Treasury bailout commitments have risen from $7.4 trillion to $14.2 trillion. $3.7 trillion has already been spent. The last country to see such a dramatic increase in the money supply was Zimbabwe, under the leadership of Robert Mugabe.
We have different economic schools. We have the Austrian school, the school of rational expectations, monetary schools and so forth. In the US, we have a totally new school, and it's called the Zimbabwe school. And it's founded by one of the great leaders of this world, Mr. Robert Mugabe, that has managed to totally impoverish his own country. And that is the monetary policy the US is pursuing. If something goes wrong, print. If it doesn't get fixed, print more.
In February of 2006, Robert Mugabe directed the Zimbabwe Reserve Bank to print $20.5 trillion to buy foreign currency to pay off IMF debt. This caused prices of consumer goods to go through the roof, and in May of 2006, the Zimbabwe government announced they would print an additional $60 trillion to pay for a 300% salary increase for the soldiers and policemen. In August of 2006, 3 zeros were chopped off the currency to form a new Zimbabwe dollar. And in June of 2007, $1 trillion of the new currency was printed to pay for a 900% salary increase for the soldiers and policemen. In July of 2007, Mugabe implemented price controls which forced stores to sell goods at government-ordered prices. This led the nation to complete chaos and empty store shelves. Mugabe's solution was to print more money, and in February of 2008, the total Zimbabwe money supply reached $800 trillion. By July of 2008, it cost $100 billion just to buy 3 eggs. In April of 2009, the Zimbabwe currency was officially declared dead and completely worthless. Zimbabweans were forced to transact in gold.
If you need cooking oil, you have to exchange with gold. If you need meal, you have to exchange it with gold. If you need soap, you have to change with gold. Everything is gold, no Zimbabwean dollars.
Gold has been universally accepted as real money for thousands of years. Unlike fiat currencies, gold can't be printed out of thin air. Gold is expensive to mine, and its supply will always be scarce. In 1980, the last time the United States had an inflationary crisis like the one we are rapidly approaching, gold prices surged to an inflation-adjusted high of $2,300 per ounce. Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker was able to get inflation under control by raising interest rates to a high of 21.5%. Back then, we were the world's largest creditor nation. Today, we are the world's largest debtor nation, with a national debt of $11.4 trillion. If the Federal Reserve is forced to raise interest rates up to 21.5% once again, just the interest on our national debt will be over $2.4 trillion per year. This is a death sentence for the American taxpayer. The United States may have an annual GDP of $14 trillion, but more than 70% of it is consumer spending. The only way it will be possible for the United States to pay off its debt is by monetizing it and effectively printing the money out of thin air. The national debt is not our only major problem. Unfunded liabilities for Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid are now $55 trillion. Up until now, the Social Security system has worked like a Ponzi scheme, not unlike the one that was run by Bernie Madoff. Americans with jobs are paying into Social Security to fund those who are receiving benefits. With the retirement of the baby boomers, the Social Security house of cards is coming to an end.
Our dollar today is worth 4 cents compared to the dollar of 1913 when the Federal Reserve took charge of it. And if you don't deal with the dollar, there will be no retirement for anybody. We're going to have chaos. And that is why you have to cut spending. That's why we need a new foreign policy. We need to tie the people over here in this country, the people who are dependent, but we need to let the people get out, whether it's Social Security or medical care or education. The Constitution doesn't advise that we do any of that anyway. That's the only way we can solve the problem.
Throughout history, the United States has had cyclical periods where paper assets, like stocks, are in favor, and other periods when hard assets, like gold, perform better than stocks. The long-term battle between stocks and gold is illustrated by looking at a chart of the Dow to gold ratio, which is the price of the Dow Jones Stock Index divided by the price of gold. After reaching a high of 44 in 1999, the Dow to gold ratio has been in free fall to its current level of 9. If the Dow to gold ratio bottoms once again at 1 like it did in 1980, we are looking at another 90% decline in the price of stocks when priced in gold.
The Dow is going to be worth 1 ounce of gold. That's the level. So right now gold is worth $900 an ounce and the Dow is at 12,000. Those two numbers are going to meet somewhere. I don't know where, but they're going to meet.
Silver prices have the potential to surge by an even greater percentage than gold. The Coinage Act of 1834 established a gold-to-silver ratio of 16:1, which lasted until silver was demonetized in 1874. The gold-to-silver ratio is currently close to 70, which means silver is receiving almost no monetary premium. During periods of high inflation, the gold-to-silver ratio tends to move back to 16, as it did in 1980. Imagine if the Dow to gold ratio returns to 1, and the gold to silver ratio returns to 16 at the same time. If the Dow and gold met at the median of their current values, we'd be looking at $4,700 per ounce gold and $294 per ounce silver. That would represent a 2,000% increase in the price of silver from its current level of $14 per ounce.
Hyperinflation is the plan of the elite. What you have just watched is the plan of the elite whereby they will own and take over everything. I have a message for them. I have no intentions in being we the sheeple. I'm going to be we the people, which I was guaranteed by the first words of the Constitution of the United States of America. I will be we the people, and we will not be we the sheeple. Now, we're going to go into some things in DVD number 3 that you've got to see, because their ultimate control factor is war. When will it happen and where? I've been told. Now, I know that you won't believe me until 1.5 to 2 years from now. And you're going to come back and say, Lindsey Williams is a prophet. You know what I'm going to tell you? No, I'm not. I claim no prophetic intuition whatsoever. I claim only that by the providence of God, I was allowed to live with the elite for 3 years, keep in touch with some of them for the past 35 years, and still hear from some who are old men now and are too old to care, and say, tell the world everything you know, chaplain. So in the next DVD, we're going into war. When and where, and can it happen all across America as it did in Detroit? I hope that you will watch DVD number 3. And thank you for allowing me to be in your home to tell you what I was told just a short while ago.